We appreciate the useful briefings from Mr. Musa Faki Mohammed, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, and Ambassador Maria Luisa Viotti, the Chef de Cabinet to the UN Secretary General. Mr. President, this is a timely and pertinent debate, as the majority of the Security Council's work is dominated by conflict situations on the African continent. This debate affords us a unique opportunity to reflect on efforts to resolve conflicts in Africa, including by African countries themselves, as well as through partnerships with continental and external role players. At the outset, we must acknowledge the positive strides made by the countries of the continent in realizing the African Union's aspirations to silence the guns by 2020 and in pursuing African solutions to problems in Africa. This has led to the resolution of long-standing conflicts that have plagued the continent. Since the transition from the Organization of African Unity to the African Union in the year 2000, the continent has developed a strong and effective framework for addressing security challenges and threats to Africa. These frameworks have created a synergy between the AU and the regional mechanisms for conflict prevention, management, and resolution. Through the success of these initiatives, the continent has made strides in reducing violent and armed conflicts, guided by the principles of subsidiarity and complementarity between the AU and our regional organizations. However, Mr. President, despite the progress made, the challenges facing the continent are complex and many, involving multiple cross-cutting issues. These include the building of peace and security, promoting inclusive socio-economic development and resilience, promoting access to resources and economic opportunity, and promoting and entrenching democracy, good governance, and respect for humanity. Historically, some of the contributing factors for instability and insecurity on the African continent include poverty, marginalization, inequality, unemployment, and failure to manage diversity, poor governance, the scramble for natural resources, external interference, and more recently, the impact of climate change. Furthermore, the matters of terrorism, violent extremism, and intercommunal violence have perpetuated instability in some parts of the continent, creating or taking advantage of the vacuum created by ongoing conflicts in many areas, as well as the scourge of poverty and inequality. Coercive and often unconstitutional changes in governments through military adventurism have also served to degrade social capital and the economies of countries, resulting in widespread violence and humanitarian crises. The impact of these challenges is not only felt on the continent, but reverberates to other countries and regions. Concerted efforts and partnerships are needed to deal with all these complex threats, including understanding the conditions that give rise to them. Consequently, for us in the continent to experience sustainable peace and prosperity, the achievement of the continental aspiration envisioned in our Agenda 2063 and the UN's Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development is required. Mr. President, the United Nations is making a considerable contribution to assist regional and sub-regional organizations in Africa to resolve conflict situations, primarily by deploying its envoys and peacekeepers, as well as by the valuable work of the United Nations Development System. For its part, the African Union and its sub-regional organizations have demonstrated leadership by reacting rapidly to maintain peace and security on the continent, drawing on their close proximity to the situations and the ability to comprehend internal and regional political dynamics. Mr. President, since the onset of our young democracy, South Africa has been an active player in the United Nations and the African Union. In recognizing the importance of these multilateral institutions, South Africa has contributed significant resources to both institutions. We have consistently been one of the biggest financial contributors to the African Union, and we are also a major contributor to UN peacekeeping missions in Africa. This includes our past deployments to the UN-AU hybrid mission in Darfur, as well as in Burundi, and our current significant presence in the DRC, where our troops are part of the highly effective Force Integration Brigade to build peace in our region. We have also supported peace building in Africa through support for political processes. And we will continue this support, including our work to train women leaders in peacekeeping and peace building. But the threats to peace and security require much more. We need to strengthen the partnership between the UN and the AU in achieving our aspirations of a conflict-free and prosperous continent. A key area pertaining to strengthening this relationship is the financing of AU-led peace support operations. It's unfortunate that despite commitments to this effect, there's not been much progress on the predictable and sustainable funding for AU-led peace support operations from UN-assessed contributions. Another area of importance which we would like to see attention given to is the need for effective measures for transitions and drawdowns from peacekeeping to post-conflict reconstruction and development. It's vital that efforts are coordinated and harmonized by all relevant stakeholders to ensure that peace-building activities are effective and that peace dividends of these operations are consolidated. The UN Peacebuilding Commission and the AU Post-Conflict Reconstruction and Development Framework should work together to provide assistance to post-conflict countries, as per request by many of these countries. National ownership and leadership is pertinent for the success of peace-building efforts, and most importantly, to prevent countries from relapsing back into conflict. We would like to further underline the imperative of involving women on an equal footing in peace and security processes. This is not only limited to countries in conflict, but includes all UN member states, in order to ensure the prominent role of women in issues discussed in institutions such as this one. Of course, the inclusion of youth in such processes would also be vital. These provisions and actions would not merely be for the sake of gender parity within the pursuit of peace, but are a necessary requirement for sustainable and effective peace, security, and development on the continent. In conclusion, Mr. President, my country is of the firm view that partnerships for the pursuit of peace and security in Africa can only succeed provided that all partners complement each other while working toward one common objective of achieving sustainable peace and security. This requires supporting Africa in taking a lead to find solutions for the conflicts that persist on the continent. Conflict has no boundaries, Mr. President. Its impact reverberates across the world, and thus it's in the interest of all of us to work hard to ensure a safe and prosperous world. I thank you for this opportunity.
I thank Your Excellency, Ms.